Dear students, welcome to your first official information video about World War II. Today we'll have some type of recap of what we talked about in the lessons before this entire Corona thing started. So we ended things in the lesson with Germany attacking Poland and the UK and France having to declare war to Germany. And that's war and things today as well. So we'll look at some of the things that we already talked about. Today, of course, one of the classes, it's the 4th of May, which in the Netherlands is Remembrance Day. So that means that we remember all the people that have died during the Second World War. And today is even a more special day, or a more special year, because it's exactly 75 years ago that Liberation Day was. So that's tomorrow, so the 5th of May. So it's 75 years ago that the Second World War ended in the Netherlands. So on the 5th of May, we were finally free. We were liberated from the Germans 75 years ago in 1945. So it's an extra special day to remember. So today, don't forget that you have to do the 1 minute of silence, and tomorrow celebrate that you are free from school and that we have our freedom in the Netherlands. So yes, we'll start with one of the reasons why the Second World War started in the Netherlands, or started in the world. So there's not just one reason why the Second World War started, but one of the reasons that we'll look at today is the Treaty of Versailles. We already talked about the Treaty of Versailles a lot, and I hope that you all still remember what it was. And today we'll look at the 5 W's. So who, what, where, when, and why. And we'll start with the what. So what is the Treaty of Versailles? The Treaty of Versailles was a negotiation of Allied powers over a peace treaty following World War I. The treaty redrew the map of Europe and punished Germany for starting World War I. So with this treaty, they made up new borders in Europe. So a lot of the countries that worked with Germany and a lot of the German-speaking countries, they were divided into new countries. Germany had to give a lot of land back to the Allied powers, and they were the ones that lost World War I. So with this treaty, signing this treaty, they acknowledged that they had lost, and their new government, their new government, they were the ones that signed this treaty. So the Germans saw them as the reason why they lost the war, because this Treaty of Versailles meant that they had to pay for a lot of damages that the war did. So they were the real losers. Then who signed the Treaty of Versailles? The major countries that signed the Treaty of Versailles were Great Britain, France, Italy, Japan, and Germany and the United States. But again, Germany wasn't really there during the negotiations, so they were the ones that signed the treaty, but they weren't the ones that had anything to say about the treaty. So the countries that signed it were Great Britain, France, Italy, Japan, Germany, and the United States. Then when was the treaty signed? The Treaty of Versailles was signed on June 28th, 1919. With the signing of the treaty, World War I had officially come to an end. So this is the official end of World War I. Then where was it signed? Well, this is quite a difficult question, of course, because it was signed in the palace at Versailles. That's why it's called the Treaty of Versailles. So the Treaty of Versailles was signed at the Palace of Versailles in France. Then why was the treaty signed? Many historians argue that the Treaty of Versailles led to World War II due to the harsh penalties mixed with an enforcement of these penalties led to a humiliation and vengeful Germany. So because of this Treaty of Versailles, the Germans had to limit their military size, they had to surrender German lands, they had to pay massive war reparations, and they had to admit that they were to blame for World War One. And because of all of these things, they felt terrible. They were humiliated, and they kind of wanted to take revenge and do something about it. And that's one of the reasons that World War II started. So that's why the Treaty of Versailles is so important. Now I want you guys to do the same thing as I just did. So I just took one of the reasons why the Second World War started, and I answered the 5 W's about it. So I already told you that there's not one single cause of World War II. And so in this activity, I want you to select one of the other ones, so one of the possible causes of the war, and create a spider map outlining the defining the 5 W's to explain one cause of World War II. So, for example, you pick failure of the League of Nations, and you put that in the middle of your spider web. Then you give it 5 legs. One of the legs is, for example, what, and you explain me what the failure of the League of Nations was, then who were in the League of Nations or in that failure, etc., etc. So you'll answer it for who, what, when, where, and why. You can decide to pause this video and do the assignment right now, or you can decide to finish the video and work on it then. So we looked at the reasons why the Second World War happened. So the Treaty of Versailles, the rise of fascism, the policy of appeasement, and the failure of the League of Nations. So now we're going to look at the real start of World War II. I already told you in the lesson that the start was that Hitler invaded Poland. Before Hitler invaded Poland, he was afraid that Russia would attack him. So Germany signed a non-aggression pact with Russia. And this was called the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. I know it sounds very strange, but the reason they called it this is because the guys that signed it were called Molotov and Ribbentrop, von Ribbentrop. And this agreement, or this pact, they agreed that Russia would not attack Germany. So it was a pact to make sure that Germany was safe. And they also divided Europe with this treaty. So they decided that if there was a war to happen, they would divide Europe in a certain way. So that was enough for Hitler to not be scared anymore and invade Poland with the help of Russia. So they attacked Poland and they divided the country just as they had agreed upon in their pact. So when Germany attacks Poland, and don't forget they already made sure that Austria belonged to their country, Czechoslovakia belonged to their country. So Poland was step number 3. And just as I told you in the lesson, every time Hitler invaded a new country, he said, but this was the last one. I won't do it again. And then the other countries told him to stop. And he said, okay, but I just need this one more country, and then I'll stop. And with Poland, they had enough. So when Hitler invaded Poland, they knew he wouldn't stop. And with the other countries, they hoped that was really the last one, and they didn't want to have a second world war. So they let him, but Poland was it. It was the last straw. So the UK and France declared war on Germany because they had to do something about him. The UK and France cut Germany's iron supply from Denmark because that was the country that they got all their iron from, and you need iron to have a war industry. So they were able to cut that overseas, their route that they would take, and as a response, Germany invaded Denmark and Norway to get his own iron from. And in a few days, Germany invaded the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and Belgium. So he's quite quick with doing this. And the Netherlands was a bit stronger than he had anticipated, but still we weren't strong enough. And in a few days, especially when he bombarded Rotterdam, we had to surrender, and he took over the countries. The reason that Germany was so quick and Hitler was so quick is that Hitler had a military strategy which was called Blitzkrieg. And it was nothing new. They already had this strategy in World War One, and I told you that then the war went from a blitzkrieg to a siegeskrieg, and a blitzkrieg is a very quick war, and a siegeskrieg is the opposite, which is very slow, because of course they ended up in their trenches. So blitzkrieg, that was a method that he used in World War II, but Hitler was successful instead of the people in World War One. So it's a method of offensive warfare designed to strike a swift, focused blow at an enemy and leading to a quick victory. And that is what happened with Hitler and World War II. He was really quick, and the countries weren't really ready for a war. And Germany was, because they were preparing for a longer time. And that's why Hitler was so successful in invading a lot of countries in a very quick period of time. So we're going to look at the German attack on the Netherlands next week. We'll talk about what happened, how the Netherlands reacted, and things like that. So your homework for this week, or for next week, that you have to finish before the next lesson, is that you have to finish that assignment about the 5 W's from this video. And that was it. So yeah, I'll hear from you guys next week. Bye.